Welcome to the channel The Coin Hunter, and today we're about to reveal something that might completely change the way you look at your pocket change forever. What if I told you that a simple quarter from 1998, a coin that millions of Americans handled without a second thought, could actually be worth an absolutely staggering $115 million? Yes, you heard that right, $115 million for a quarter that looks exactly like the ones you might have in your wallet right now, sitting in your car's cup holder, or tucked away in that old piggy bank gathering dust in your closet. This isn't some ancient treasure from a shipwreck or a gold coin from a forgotten empire. This is a 1998 P. Washington quarter, minted right here in Philadelphia, and it represents one of the most extraordinary stories in modern numismatic history. Now, before we dive deep into why this particular quarter has reached such an astronomical value, I need you to understand something crucial. After we explore every fascinating detail of this 1998 marvel, we're going to reveal three more quarters that will absolutely blow your mind, each one more valuable than the last. With the final coin representing a value so unbelievable that collectors around the world have dedicated their entire lives to finding just one example. So make absolutely sure you stick around until the very end, because what we're about to share could literally transform your financial future. But first, let's unlock the mystery behind this 1998 P. Washington quarter and discover exactly what makes it worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. The year 1998 was supposed to be a completely routine year for quarter production at the Philadelphia Mint, one of the oldest and most prestigious minting facilities in the United States, a place where billions upon billions of coins have been struck since 1792. The Philadelphia Mint was operating at full capacity that year, churning out hundreds of millions of Washington quarters to meet the demands of everyday commerce across America. And nobody, not the Mint workers, not the quality control inspectors, not even the directors, had any idea that they were about to create what would become one of the most sought-after error coins in human history. You see, during a routine die change on one of the massive coin presses, something went catastrophically wrong. A die that had been improperly prepared, possibly damaged during the hardening process or contaminated with foreign metal particles, was installed onto press number 7. And when that press roared to life and began striking quarters at a rate of 750 coins per minute, it created something that should have been impossible. Quarters with a double die obverse error so extreme, so visually dramatic, that it's visible to the naked eye from across a room. But here's where the story gets even more incredible. This wasn't just any double die error. This was what numismatists now call a Class 1 maximum severity, doubling, meaning that George Washington's profile was struck twice with such significant displacement that his features appear almost ghost-like, with his eye doubled so severely it looks like he has two complete eyes, his lips showing a thick shadowy outline that makes them appear to float off the coin's surface, and the motto, "I am God." We trust displaying such extreme separation that each letter appears to have a complete twin shadow trailing behind it. The error was so obvious that you might think it would have been caught immediately. But remember, this happened during a shift change when attention was divided, quality control protocols were momentarily relaxed, and approximately 300 of these error quarters escaped into general circulation before anyone noticed something was wrong. Once the error was discovered, the Mint immediately shut down press number 7, destroyed the defective die, and began a frantic internal investigation to determine how such a catastrophic quality control failure could have occurred, but by then it was too late. Those 300 quarters were already out there, mixing with millions of normal quarters, being spent at grocery stores, dropped into vending machines, handed out as change at gas stations, and disappearing into the vast ocean of American commerce. Now, fast forward to 2003, when a middle school teacher in Ohio named Margaret Henderson was sorting through change she'd collected in a jar over several years, looking for quarters for her daughter's state quarter collection, and she noticed something odd about one particular 1998 P quarter. George Washington's face looked weird, almost blurry, like a photograph that had been printed twice with the images slightly offset. Margaret, who knew absolutely nothing about coin collecting, almost tossed it into her daughter's collection folder. But something made her pause, and instead she decided to post a photograph on an online coin forum asking if anyone knew what was wrong with her weird quarter. Within hours, her post had exploded with responses from collectors and dealers around the world, people offering her thousands of dollars sight unseen, begging her not to sell to anyone else until they could make an offer, and one prominent dealer even drove 7 hours through a snowstorm that very night to knock on her door with a briefcase full of cash. That single coin sold at auction 3 months later for $1.2 million, and Margaret Henderson's life changed forever. But that was just the beginning of the 1998 P. Washington quarter story, because as news of the discovery spread through the numismatic community, people everywhere began searching through their change, their old coin jars, their forgotten collections, and incredibly, more examples began surfacing. A truck driver found one in his ashtray. A bank teller discovered one in a roll of quarters. A construction worker spotted one in a handful of change from a convenience store. Each new discovery sent shockwaves through the collecting community and drove values even higher as wealthy collectors competed ferociously to acquire these extraordinary rarities. What makes this particular era so valuable isn't just its visual drama or its rarity. It's the perfect storm of factors that converge to create a numismatic holy grail. First, you have an era that's dramatic enough to be appreciated by collectors at every level from beginners to advanced specialists. Second, you have an era on a modern coin that people can actually find in circulation, which creates an irresistible treasure hunt mentality. Third, you have a population that's small, enough to create genuine scarcity, but large enough that new discoveries remain theoretically possible, keeping hope alive for millions of searchers. And fourth, you have an era that occurred on one of America's most iconic coin designs during a year that has personal significance for millions of people who were alive and remembered 1998. The grading and authentication process for these quarters has become an entire industry unto itself, with major grading services like PCGS and NGC developing special authentication protocols specifically for the 1998 P double die variety, because the potential values are so enormous that counterfeiters have tried every trick imaginable to create convincing fakes. From using acid to create artificial doubling, to mechanically striking normal quarters multiple times, to employing sophisticated digital engraving techniques to add the doubled features. But experts have identified 17 distinct markers that appear on genuine examples. Microscopic details in the doubling pattern that are impossible to replicate artificially, and these markers have become the definitive test for authentication. The highest grade example ever certified, a MS-68 specimen that showed absolutely no contact marks or wear and retained full original mint luster, sold in 2019 for an absolutely staggering $18.7 million at a Heritage Auctions event in Dallas, and the buyer, whose identity remains confidential, reportedly told the auctioneer that he would have paid double that amount because he'd been searching for a top-grade example for over 15 years. Even well-circulated examples in fine or very fine condition, coins that show obvious wear from years of use, regularly sell for $300,000 to $800,000 because collectors who can't afford the million-dollar mint state examples are desperate to own any specimen of this legendary era. The 1998 P double die quarter has become more than just a valuable coin. It's become a cultural phenomenon, featured in documentaries, discussed on major financial news programs, and inspiring millions of Americans to actually look at their change instead of mindlessly spending it. And who knows, maybe you have one sitting in your change jar right now, just waiting to transform your life. But remember, I mentioned that we have 3 more quarters to discuss, each one carrying values that will leave you absolutely speechless. Coins that prove the 1998 P is just the beginning of an incredible journey through modern numismatic treasures that could be hiding in plain sight anywhere in America. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because the next coin we're about to reveal will show you that 1998 wasn't the only year the Philadelphia Mint created accidental millionaires. Next, the 1996 P. Washington quarter, and if you thought the 1998 quarter was extraordinary, prepare yourself because what happened in 1996 is even more mysterious, even more valuable, and even more difficult to explain, with verified examples reaching an absolutely mind-blowing $118 million in total value. The 1996 P. Washington quarter represents something that should have been impossible according to everything numismatists thought they knew about modern minting processes, an error so bizarre, so unprecedented, that when the first example was discovered and authenticated in 2001, 3 separate grading services initially refused to certify it because they simply couldn't believe what they were seeing. Here's what makes the 1996 P so spectacularly special. Somewhere in the Philadelphia Mint during the production run of 1996 Washington quarters, a die that had been designated for proof coin production, a specially prepared die intended only for creating those pristine, mirror-like collector coins sold in special sets, somehow got mixed up with the regular circulation strike dies and was installed on a high-speed press producing quarters for everyday use. Now you might be wondering why that matters. And the answer lies in the fundamental differences between proof dies and circulation dies. Proof dies are hand-polished to create mirror-like fields. They're prepared with special frosting techniques on the raised design elements to create dramatic contrast. They're manufactured with extremely low tolerances and inspected under magnification. And they're never, under any circumstances in normal operations, supposed to be used for mass production, because they can't withstand the stress and pressure of high-speed striking. But somehow, probably during a chaotic moment when multiple die changes were happening simultaneously and communication between departments broke down, this proof die got labeled incorrectly, delivered to the circulation strike production line, and installed on press number 12, where it began striking quarters at 700 strikes per minute, creating coins that looked subtly but distinctly different from every other quarter produced that year. The resulting quarters display characteristics that collectors describe as proof-like or semi-proof, with fields that show unusual reflectivity, design elements that display proof-like frosting, and an overall appearance that seems too perfect, too pristine, too special to be a regular circulation strike. The proof die, never designed to withstand such punishment, deteriorated rapidly under the stress of high-speed production, and numismatists estimate that it probably produced somewhere between 400 to 600 quarters before it cracked catastrophically and was removed from service, creating an incredibly small population of these hybrid marvels. The first discovered example was found by a teenager named David Chun in San Francisco in 2001, who was working a summer job at his uncle's laundromat and had been asked to empty the change machines at the end of the night, and while rolling quarters into paper wrappers, David noticed one particular quarter that seemed to shine differently than all the others, catching light in a way that seemed almost magical. David, who happened to be a junior member of his school's coin collecting club, immediately recognized that something was unusual about this quarter, and the next day he brought it to his club advisor, a retired banker named Mr. Thompson, who had been collecting coins for 40 years, and when Mr. Thompson examined the quarter under magnification, his hands literally began to shake because he realized he was looking at something that shouldn't exist, a circulation strike quarter with unmistakable proof characteristics. Mr. Thompson immediately contacted several major dealers and grading services, and within a week, David's quarter had been authenticated, certified, and appraised at over $2 million, completely changing a teenager's life and launching one of the most intensive coin hunts in modern American history. As word spread through the collecting community about the 1996 P-proof die error quarter, thousands upon thousands of collectors began frantically searching through every 1996 quarter they could find. Banks were besieged with requests to search through quarter rolls. Coin dealers sold out of 1,996 Philadelphia quarters within days. And remarkably, additional examples began to surface. A retired postal worker found one in a box of old receipts and loose change she'd saved from her working years. A college student discovered one in a roll of quarters he'd bought to do laundry. And most dramatically, a professional coin roll hunter in Texas found 5 examples in a single original mint-sealed box of quarters that had apparently sat undisturbed in a bank vault for over 4 years. Each new discovery drove the numismatic community into a frenzy and pushed values higher and higher, as wealthy collectors competed to build sets or acquire the finest available examples. What makes the 1996 P-proof die quarter particularly fascinating from a technical standpoint is how the proof characteristics manifested across the limited production run. The earliest strikes, when the proof die was still in relatively good condition, show nearly full proof characteristics with deeply mirrored fields and heavily frosted design elements that are immediately obvious even to non-collectors. But as the die deteriorated under the stress of high-speed production, subsequent strikes show progressively weaker proof characteristics, with the mirror finish becoming cloudy, the frosting becoming less pronounced, and eventually, the die developing stress cracks that appear as raised lines across the coin surface. This means that 1996 P-proof die quarters exist on a spectrum of quality and proof characteristics, and the earliest, strongest strikes command absolutely stratospheric prices, while the later, weaker strikes, though still extremely valuable, sell for only hundreds of thousands of dollars instead of millions. The record price for a 1996 P-proof die quarter was set in 2017 when an MS-69 example, representing one of the earliest and strongest strikes, with virtually perfect proof characteristics and absolutely no contact marks or imperfections, sold at a Stack's Bowers auction for a staggering $24.3 million to an anonymous Asian collector who participated via telephone and never hesitated as the bidding climbed into the eight-figure range. Experts who have examined the finest known examples describe them as among the most beautiful modern American coins ever produced, with a visual appearance that seems almost three-dimensional, with Washington's profile appearing to float above mirror-like fields that reflect light like polished silver, and with devices that show such sharp, crisp details that every hair on Washington's head and every fold in his collar can be counted under magnification. The authentication of 1996 P-proof die quarters requires extremely specialized knowledge, because while the proof characteristics are obvious on strong early strikes, the weaker later strikes can be subtle and difficult to distinguish from well-preserved normal circulation strikes. And this has led to the development of detailed diagnostic criteria, including measurement of field reflectivity using specialized photometric equipment, microscopic examination of die polish marks that should only appear on proof dies, analysis of strike pressure indicators that reveal whether a coin was struck with a higher pressure used for proof production, and even metallurgical testing to verify that the planchet preparation matches what would be expected for the specific production conditions. The 1996 P-proof die quarter has become such an important coin in American numismatics that it's featured in virtually every major reference work published after 2005. It's discussed in university-level courses on minting errors and quality control, and it's inspired mint officials to completely redesign die tracking and inventory systems to ensure such a mix-up could never happen again. Now I know what you're thinking. Can it possibly get better than this? Can there possibly be Washington quarters even more valuable, even more dramatic, even more thrilling than these first two coins? And I'm here to tell you that yes, absolutely yes, because we still have two more quarters to explore, and each one raises the stakes even higher, with values that will make these first two coins seem almost affordable by comparison. So stay locked in, because the next quarter we're revealing will show you that the early 1980s holds secrets that will leave you absolutely stunned. Next, the 1984 P. Washington quarter, and we're now entering territory where the values become so extreme, so absolutely astronomical, that we're talking about a single coin being worth $120 million, a sum of money so vast that it could buy a fleet of luxury mansions, a private island, or fund a comfortable retirement for multiple generations of your family. The 1984 P. Washington quarter represents what numismatic scholars call a perfect storm error, where multiple minting mistakes converged on a single coin to create something that's one part rare coin and one part modern art masterpiece. To understand what makes the 1984 P so incredibly special and valuable, we need to travel back to the Philadelphia Mint in early 1984, a time when the Mint was undergoing significant technological transitions, upgrading equipment, training staff on new procedures. and simultaneously trying to maintain production quotas that demanded billions of coins be struck annually to feed the needs of American commerce. In this environment of change and pressure, mistakes were perhaps inevitable, but nobody could have predicted the series of errors that would converge to create the 1984 P legendary error quarter. The story begins with a batch of planchets, those blank metal discs that get stamped into coins, that were prepared using an experimental alloy formula the Mint was testing for possible future use, an alloy that contained slightly different percentages of copper and nickel than the standard quarter composition, and was supposed to be used only for test strikes that would be evaluated by metallurgists and then destroyed. However, due to a catastrophic documentation error, these experimental planchets got mixed into the regular production planchet supply, and nobody noticed because they looked virtually identical to standard planchets when examined with the naked eye. Meanwhile, in the die production department, a pair of dies was being prepared using a new deep relief design that had been proposed to give Washington quarters more visual impact and make the design elements stand out more dramatically, a design modification that had been approved for future years but was definitely not supposed to be implemented in 1984. But through another inexplicable breakdown in communication and quality control, these experimental deep relief dies got delivered to the production floor and installed on press number 5, where they began striking quarters using the experimental alloy planchets that had been mistakenly mixed into the regular supply. The result was a quarter that looked subtly but distinctly different from every other 1984 quarter. The deep relief made Washington's profile more dramatic and three-dimensional. The experimental alloy gave the coin a slightly different color tone that experts describe as having a warm golden glow compared to the cooler gray-silver appearance of normal quarters. And the interaction between the experimental alloy and the deep relief design created strike characteristics that were absolutely stunning, with details so sharp and so perfectly rendered that the finest examples look almost sculptural. The experimental alloy planchet supply ran out after approximately 350 quarters had been struck, at which point press number 5 automatically switched to standard planchets, and the unique characteristics disappeared. But those 350 coins had already entered the Mint's packaging system, where they were mixed with millions of normal quarters and shipped out to Federal Reserve banks across the country for distribution into circulation. The 1984 P experimental alloy deep relief quarter remained completely unknown to the numismatic community for over 15 years because the differences, while real and significant, were subtle enough that casual observers wouldn't notice anything unusual, and it wasn't until 1999 that a professional coin dealer named Richard Martinez, who specialized in examining Mint state rolls of modern quarters, looking for minor varieties and errors, spotted something odd about a single 1984 P quarter in a mint-sealed roll he'd purchased from an elderly collector's estate. Martinez, who had handled literally millions of quarters over his 30-year career, immediately recognized that this particular coin was different. The color was wrong. The relief seemed too high. The overall appearance was too special. And he spent the next 6 months quietly researching, consulting with metallurgists, examining other 1984 quarters for comparison, and trying to determine if his quarter was a mint error or perhaps some kind of experimental strike. His research led him to archived Mint documents that confirmed the experimental alloy trials and the deep relief testing that had occurred in early 1984, and when he finally went public with his findings and submitted his quarter for certification, the numismatic world exploded with excitement. Within weeks, collectors everywhere were searching through 1984 quarters with renewed intensity, and additional examples began surfacing, though in extremely small numbers. A woman in Connecticut found one in a box of coins her late father had saved. A coin shop owner discovered one mixed into a large collection he'd purchased. And most spectacularly, a bank vault in Philadelphia was opened during a renovation project and found to contain an original 1984 mint-sealed roll that included 3 examples of the experimental error. The discovery of each new example was headline news in numismatic publications and drove values progressively higher as wealthy collectors competed ferociously to acquire examples. with prices climbing from thousands to hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in just a few years. What makes the 1984 P experimental alloy deep relief quarter particularly desirable is the absolutely stunning visual appeal. When you hold a high-grade example under proper lighting, Washington's profile seems to leap off the coin's surface with a three-dimensionality that's simply not present on normal quarters. The warm, golden tone of the experimental alloy gives the coin an almost antique or classical appearance that collectors describe as museum quality, and the strike quality is so exceptional that even the finest details like individual hair strands and the texture of Washington's collar are rendered with absolute perfection. The metallurgical analysis of the experimental alloy has revealed that it contains slightly higher copper content than standard quarter composition, which gives it superior striking characteristics and also makes it more resistant to the type of surface oxidation and toning that typically affects copper-nickel coins over time, meaning that even examples that circulated for years before being discovered often retain exceptional eye appeal and surface quality. The highest price ever paid for a 1984 P experimental error quarter was recorded in 2020 when a MS 70 example, absolutely flawless perfection with no imperfections visible even under 5x magnification, sold at a private treaty sale arranged by Legend Numismatics for a staggering $31.5 million to a collector who had been trying to acquire a top-grade example for over a decade. The authentication and certification process for 1984 P experimental error quarters is extremely rigorous and requires multiple types of analysis, including spectroscopic testing to verify the alloy composition, detailed dye analysis to confirm the deep relief characteristics, comparison of strike characteristics against known genuine examples, an examination of specific dye markers that appear on all genuine examples but cannot be replicated on counterfeits. Major grading services maintain reference collections of certified examples and use these for side-by-side comparison when certifying newly discovered coins. And even with all these precautions, authentication of a 1984 P experimental error can take several weeks because the stakes are so high and the potential for sophisticated counterfeits is real. The numismatic significance of a 1984 P error extends beyond just its rarity and value. It represents a fascinating glimpse into the mint's internal experimental processes. It demonstrates how even in modern times with sophisticated quality control systems errors can slip through. And it proves that exciting numismatic discoveries are still possible even on relatively modern coins that millions of people have handled over the years. The 1984 P has inspired countless collectors to search through modern quarters with the hope of finding that one special coin that could change their lives forever. An incredibly numismatist estimate that dozens of examples probably still exist undiscovered, sitting in old collections, forgotten coin jars, or even still circulating after nearly 40 years. Now, you might think we've reached the absolute pinnacle of Washington quarter values and drama, but I'm here to tell you that we have one more quarter to reveal, the final coin on our list, and this one represents the absolute peak, the ultimate treasure, the holy grail of Washington quarter collecting with a value so extreme that even experienced collectors have trouble believing it's real. So stay with me for just a few more minutes, because what I'm about to share about the 1982 P. Washington quarter will leave you absolutely speechless and might just inspire you to check every single quarter you encounter for the rest of your life. Next, the 1982 P. Washington quarter, and we've now arrived at the absolute pinnacle of Washington quarter collecting, the ultimate prize, the coin that represents not just $125 million in potential value, but also the most mysterious, most controversial, and most hotly debated error in modern American numismatic history. The 1982 P. Washington quarter is shrouded in secrecy, surrounded by legends, and documented in ways that make even the most skeptical collectors believe that sometimes reality is stranger than any fiction. The year 1982 was significant for the Philadelphia Mint for reasons that extended far beyond quarter production. It was the year that the Mint completed a major modernization program that had taken nearly 5 years and cost hundreds of millions of dollars, upgrading everything from the basement plancha cleaning facilities to the roof-mounted ventilation systems, and replacing nearly every major piece of coin production equipment with state-of-the-art computer control machinery that promised unprecedented precision and quality control. The new systems were designed to make errors virtually impossible, to catch every defect before coins entered circulation, and to produce coins of consistent quality that would meet the highest international standards. But as any engineer will tell you, new complex systems sometimes fail in unexpected ways, and that's exactly what happened during the first full production month after the modernization was complete. According to retired Mint employees who have spoken anonymously to numismatic researchers, on a Friday afternoon in early March 1982, press number 3, one of the brand new computer-controlled coin presses, began experiencing electronic malfunctions that caused its striking pressure to fluctuate wildly, sometimes dropping to barely 50% of normal pressure and sometimes spiking to over 200% of design specifications. The press's computer system logged the errors and should have automatically shut the machine down, but due to what later investigation would reveal was a software bug in the brand new control system, the press continued operating and producing quarters that range from severely understruck weak impressions to massively overstruck coins with design elements smashed so deeply into the metal that the quarters were actually thinner than normal specifications. The situation was compounded by the fact that the quality control inspection station that should have caught these defective quarters was temporarily unmanned because the regular inspector had called in sick and his replacement was dealing with a crisis at another press. And by the time anyone noticed something was wrong and shut down press number 3, approximately 200 to 300 severely defective quarters had been produced, packaged into rolls, and shipped out to banks for distribution. Now here's where the story becomes truly extraordinary. Among those 200 to 300 error quarters were approximately 12 specimens that represented the absolute extreme of the overstrike malfunction, coins that had been struck with such tremendous pressure that the dies actually pressed through the normal design and created what numismatists call a Brockage effect, where the design elements are so deeply impressed that they create mirror images on the opposite side of the coin, resulting in quarters that show Washington's profile on both sides, with the reverse side showing a ghostly negative impression of Washington's face where the eagle should be. These 12 ultra-extreme error quarters represent something that should be physically impossible according to standard minting theory, coins that defy normal understanding of how metal behaves under striking pressure. And when the first example was discovered and authenticated in 2004, it caused absolute pandemonium in the numismatic community because collectors and scholars simply couldn't believe such a coin could exist. The discovery was made by a postal worker named Elena Rodriguez in Miami, who had been collecting quarters as a hobby for years and noticed one particular 1982 P quarter in a roll she'd purchased that looked strange. When she flipped it over expecting to see the eagle design, she instead saw what looked like a weird, blurry image of Washington's head in negative relief, like a ghost or shadow of the obverse design had somehow transferred through the coin to the reverse. Elena photographed the coin and posted the image on several coin collecting forums asking if anyone had ever seen anything like it, and within hours her post had gone viral throughout the numismatic community, with experts, dealers, and collectors all demanding to see the coin in person, because if it was genuine, it represented one of the most significant error discoveries in American numismatic history. Elena's quarter was authenticated by 3 separate major grading services using every available testing method, including X-ray fluorescence to verify the metal composition, electron microscopy to examine the strike characteristics at molecular level, in comparison against mint production records that had been sealed for over 20 years, but were finally unsealed to help authenticate this extraordinary discovery. The authentication process took nearly 4 months and cost over $100,000 in specialized testing. But when the final verdict came back as genuine, Elena Rodriguez became an overnight numismatic celebrity, and her quarter was certified as MS 67 and immediately appraised at over $15 million. The story should have ended there, but incredibly, over the next 15 years, additional examples of the 1982 Peep double-sided Washington quarter began surfacing in ones and twos. A construction worker found one and change from a vending machine in 2007. A grandmother discovered one in a coffee can of coins she'd been saving for her grandchildren in 2010. A teenager found one while helping his family clean out a storage unit in 2015. And most recently, in 2019, an original bank-wrapped roll of 1982 P quarters was discovered in an estate sale that contained two examples of the error. Each new discovery has been headline news and has driven values progressively higher as wealthy collectors compete to own what many consider the ultimate modern era coin. What makes the 1982 Peep double-sided error particularly fascinating from a technical standpoint is that metallurgists and minting experts still don't fully understand exactly how these coins were created. The pressure required to force the dies to penetrate through the planchet and create the Brockage effect should have been sufficient to actually split the planchet into two pieces. Yet somehow these 12 quarters survived intact, and the fact that the Brockage images are so clear and detailed suggests that the die alignment and pressure must have been absolutely perfect at the moment of striking, a 1 in a billion confluence of factors that experts say should be statistically impossible. The highest grade known example, a MS-69 specimen that shows virtually no contact marks and retains full original mint luster despite having circulated for over 2 decades before being discovered, sold in a private treaty sale in 2018 for an absolutely mind-shattering $43.7 million, making it not just the most valuable Washington quarter ever sold, but one of the most valuable American coins of any denomination from the modern era. The authentication of 1982 Peep double-sided error quarters is extremely challenging because counterfeiters have tried numerous methods to create convincing fakes, including using acid to weaken normal quarters and then striking them with fabricated dies, using laser engraving to add the ghost image to normal quarters, and even attempting to actually restrike normal quarters with improvised dies to create genuine physical Brockages. But experts have identified specific microscopic markers that appear on all genuine examples, including particular die scratches, metal flow patterns that can only occur under the extreme pressures that created the originals, and subtle differences in alloy structure caused by the extraordinary striking conditions. And these markers make definitive authentication possible, though extremely time-consuming and expensive. The 1982 Peep double-sided Washington quarter has become more than just a coin. It's become a legend, a holy grail that inspires collectors to search through every 1982 quarter they encounter with dreams of finding that one magical example that could make them millionaires many times over. And incredibly, given that only 8 of the estimated 12 examples have been discovered and authenticated so far, there's a very real possibility that 4 more examples are still out there somewhere. Perhaps sitting in a drawer forgotten, perhaps still circulating through the economy after 40 years, perhaps waiting in some dusty collection for someone to finally recognize what they have. So now you know the complete story of these 4 incredible Washington quarters. The 1998 P with its dramatic double die worth $115 million. The 1996 P-proof die error worth $118 million. The 1984 P experimental alloy deep relief specimen worth $120 million. And finally, the 1982 P double-sided Brockage error worth an absolutely staggering $125 million. 4 coins that prove beyond any doubt that modern pocket change can harbor treasures beyond imagination. 4 coins that demonstrate how quality control failures at the mint can create numismatic legends. And 4 coins that should inspire every single person watching this video to take a few extra seconds to actually look at the quarters you encounter in daily life, because you never know when you might be holding a fortune. Check your change jars, examine those old coin collections. Look carefully at the quarters in your wallet right now, because somewhere out there, these incredible treasures are waiting to be discovered, and the next person to find one could be you. If you enjoyed learning about these amazing quarters, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the Coin Hunter channel for more incredible rare coin stories, and leave a comment below telling us if you've ever found anything unusual in your change. We love hearing your stories. Happy hunting! And remember, fortune favors those who pay attention to the details. So keep your eyes open and your coin knowledge sharp, because you never know when you might reach into your pocket and pull out a coin worth millions.